Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Mosaic Podcast. I cannot believe the amount of people that are coming onto the show and how revealing this show has been for everybody who is listening. And what I love about today's guest is, I think in some ways, he may be the central character in my book called The Mosaic. I wrote a book called The Mosaic, and the book is about a boy who loses his parents 2 years apart on the same day. And when he asks the adults where his parents are, they tell him they're in a place called heaven. Now, Andrew didn't go searching for heaven, but Mo, the main character in The Mosaic, just took off and started walking. And he met not the classic archetypes that you would imagine that would be people that would introduce him to heaven, but rather he met common, ordinary people. But what he saw in the conversation, when he took a moment to just sit and listen to them and hear their stories, the person he initially saw was not at all the person he left when he got up to go. And when I heard Andrew's story, I went, oh my God, this guy, without even knowing him, without even knowing that what he did, seems like he's right out of central casting in the book. So let me give you a little bit of a bio on Andrew, and then I don't like bios that much, but this is just interesting, okay? And then we're going to just jump right in. Andrew's a writer, speaker, and a peace activist. And after graduating from Middlebury College, he was ready to begin his adult life, but he didn't know how. We're going to ask about that in a few minutes. So he decided to take a cross-country quest in search of guidance. His goal was to see everyone he met as his guide. In the year that followed, he faced an Appalachian winter and a Mojave summer. And as challenging as those both were, they paled in comparison to the beast he met inside himself of fear, loneliness, and doubt. Though he was advised not to trust anyone, he encountered incredible kindness from strangers of all races and economic stature. Thousands shared stories with him, sometimes confiding their prejudices too. And often, he just didn't know how to respond. He wanted to know how to find unity and diversity, how to stay connected, even as fear works to tear us apart. He listened for answers that he hoped would come until he began to find that the answers he was seeking might be found in the listening itself. After his year-long walk across America, Andrew began sharing the stories of the people he met. He co-produced a radio documentary about his project that was featured on The American Life, and wrote his book, Walking to Listen, which goes deeper into the stories and explores the practices and philosophy of what it means to walk to listen. Andrew now writes and speaks about the discipline of trustworthy listening and its role in the work of reconciliation, transformational resistance, and peacemaking at the personal and collective levels. He gives workshops and trains participants in the work of becoming a trustworthy listener. So much of who Andrew is feels like a younger version of me. Because the moment I finished my book, The Mosaic, I felt my inner voice say to me, get out on the road and talk to people, but don't talk, listen to them. Andrew, with absolute biggest joy of my heart, I welcome you onto the Mosaic Podcast. How are you today?
Blessed and grateful. Thank you so much for having me here. Yeah.
It is my honor. And so what I want to do in the podcast, I want to just sort of go into life a little bit before you became who you are right now. Just talk about that a little bit, and then we'll get into some of the stuff, okay?
Sure.
What did you want to be when you were a kid?
It's funny, one of my 8th grade teachers actually just sent me a picture of a project that we had to do as 8th graders of making a coat of arms for ourselves, you know? So if you were to make your own coat of arms, you know, what would be the icons you'd include? What symbols would you include to represent yourself and your destiny? And as a 14-year-old, the coat of arms I came up with, the main symbol was the image of an Earth, of the globe, planet Earth, and a little man walking on top of
Get
the
out of
Earth
here.
with a little backpack on his back. So, who did I used to be? I think the seeds of who I am now were there, and I was graced to have two parents who were very supportive in their raising of me, in that they did a good job of listening first, not so much trying to impose their wishes for me onto me and squash me into being something, but rather listening to the soul that was born into this body that is their child, and then listening who that soul is here to become. So I was graced by that, and yet found myself in a culture that is bent on cookie cutting us into what it believes is normal, you know. And some people might be sort of conspiracy theorists about this, or believe that there's some sort of like malevolence to it, but I myself am of a mind that it's more a product of um, ignorance and not knowing. If you have never known the unique truth of your unique soul, and have been cookie cut into some kind of prefabricated mold, then you're probably not going to know how to support the younger generation in becoming their truly unique selves, and so that's how culture gets passed on. I think is it just gets passed on. And so I found myself in that, and had the privilege of attending some of the most prestigious schools in the country, probably. And I'm grateful for what those schools gave me. And yet there wasn't much, or I guess I would say now, like, to be compassionate about it, is that there wasn't a strong enough focus on accentuating and highlighting the personal. We were here to sort of absorb information, not
Yeah.
share with one another the stories and tragedies and beauties of our lives that got us into that classroom. And so that's what I was born into, and not really. So what that meant is I was kind of confused, like I didn't know. I had this feeling of I'm here to walk, I'm here to listen, I'm here to adventure, I'm here to connect in a deep way, but I wasn't necessarily surrounded by the communities and the communities that were interested in making that happen, who could share with me the tools to help make that happen.
Well, there aren't many.
Um,
It doesn't seem like there are many communities where that is the way. Like I have two stepchildren, a 16-year-old boy and a 15-year-old girl, and I have a developmentally delayed daughter that is 29 years old. The world is very good, schools, everything, at fitting square pegs into square holes.
yeah,
But if you are
but yeah,
if you are a round peg trying to fit into a
yeah,
square hole, they're not very
yeah,
good. They don't know what to do. So for the convenience of the education system, they work to say, well, if we can get 60 or 70% of the kids okay, we'll be
mhm,
okay. And when I ask them, well, what do you do with with our kid who is clearly a round peg
yeah,
and doesn't fit into a square hole, they said, we really don't know.
yeah.
And so
Wow.
part of what the system is, it's set up that we've just become so big and so grown that we operate in a convenience model. Like, let's see if we can just package everybody in the same way. And what I find, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, is that as I get older and older, my priority has always been know myself.
Mm,
And
mm,
all my friends would say, who are millionaires now, said to me, Danny, isn't it enough knowing yourself? I mean, isn't it time to just get out there and create the impact that you're going to have in the world? And I said, no, I think I'm going to stay here. And now when I look at them with their millions of dollars and their affluent lifestyles, which is beautiful, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't see many people that actually know themselves or are taught to know themselves. I don't see many people that are given the opportunity. And I see most people are scared to get to know themselves. So how really, what fear did that bring up in you? I mean, it's beautiful to have these parents that say, I'm going to respect your right to be yourself. But in a world where nobody's really themselves, where did that leave you?
Mm-hmm. Well, it left me lost and confused and terrified.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I graduated from college, and some part of me knew that a greater intimacy was possible with the people in my life, but I was blocked from it in some way. Some part of
Yeah.
me knew that um, profound, meaningful connection was possible, but between every human being, but between any and every two individuals, but again, that takes, because of the wounds that we all inherit and then experience in our lives, uh, being able to know thyself, know ourselves, which means knowing our pain and understanding it, and being able to navigate that pain, and be willing to be with someone else as they navigate theirs vis-a-vis us,
Right.
is a very complicated, challenging process. And that's the process of relationship.
Yeah.
That's relationship. And we're
So,
not really taught how to do that.
so let's get out of the sort of teaching mode for a minute, because I love what you're saying and I want to make it more personal.
Yes.
How did that show up in your life? What was the fear? What was the thing you were most scared of growing up?
Yeah. Oh man. Well,
And again, you have permission to say I don't feel like talking about that.
yeah. No, thank
Okay.
you. I want to live in a world where we all feel safe and empowered in sharing our stories, so a part of that for me means risking it.
Sharing your story,
um,
right?
I think, yeah. So when I was 15, my parents divorced in pretty dramatic fashion, traumatic and dramatic, and with the way things unfurled and unraveled, I came to have a very intense um, distrust of my father, and
Yeah.
a fear. So you're asking about my fear.
Yeah.
The fear was that I would someday become like him, and make the choices that he made, which led to, or which were a part of what led to the pain that we then experienced as a family. And so there, there's that. Um, and then there's a more general fear of, my God, I'm going to live the rest of my life and never actually get to know anybody.
Yeah.
I'm going to live the rest of my life and never actually get to know myself in the way that you can only know yourself if you spend time alone and in the unfamiliar. And what is my life going to be? Whose life am I going to be living if I'm not living my own?
Yeah. Yeah.
If I
No.
don't know myself, I can't live my own life. And so then, my God, whose life is it that I'm living?
So I just had an interesting flash, and I love and respect your honesty, because these are hard things to talk about. But
Mhm.
I really want to shine the light on them, because I don't
Yeah,
believe you're alone in this. I don't believe you're the only one
yeah,
that feels it. And what I want for as our listeners to have the courage to look at some of those places, because in a very
mm,
short period of time, we went from, I had the greatest parents who opened up the door for me to, and they're still the
mm,
greatest
mm,
parents. They're not the
mm.
best. Nothing's changed, right? But just a different
Right.
perspective
They
has made,
coexist.
they coexist, and all of us coexist with all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and so what I'm really interested in hearing is the hit that I got was even in the message that you were given to walk
Hmm.
and to share the stories of other people.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, and I listened to some of your talks, and I really enjoyed them. Thank you for doing those on YouTube and wherever, right? Someone asked you, have you ever felt listened to?
Mm.
And you had to pause, because you have felt listened to a few times, but most of the time your answer was, most of the time people really don't know how to listen. So even in the work of trying to find yourself by listening to the stories of others, your work became telling the stories of others in some ways and not necessarily sharing the story of yourself. Does that make sense to you?
Well, I was at first quite reluctant to share my story because, yes, it's challenging to listen to someone else, but in some ways it's even more challenging to be listened to in the depths of yourself.
Yeah,
I think a
yeah.
lot of times. So I was afraid to be listened to and seen in that way, to reveal the, the pain of my family's divorce, and to reveal the intensity of some of the existential questions I was walking with, and the emotions that those questions brought up, of confusion and sometimes fear. I mean, those are vulnerable, intimate things to share, and to
100%.
really go there and let someone listen to you in that way can be scary if you've never experienced that before, or
So,
if you've been judged.
yeah. So
Yeah.
pause for a minute, because this is me.
I got so much to say about this now.
I know. I love it. I love it. And it's important. I really want to, offline, I really want to have more conversations.
I'm grateful for your guidance. Yeah, thank you.
I don't even, it's not even guidance. It's just, I'm you and you're me. And I feel that connection, and I hear stuff. And so
Yeah.
here's the amazing thing. How were you able to do that for other people when you didn't, in your soul, know that you could trust other people to do that for you? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Yeah, it does. The first thing that comes to mind is, I guess it wouldn't be true to say that I hadn't been listened to in the way that I'm talking about up to that point.
Yeah.
I had received that gift from my mother, certainly, and from my father in his own unique ways, and then from a few other elders in my life. So I wasn't starting off blind and from scratch. I was the recipient of a great gift, and that gift was listening. I had been listened to in that way, so I did have some understanding of it. And then I would say, as I began to learn how to do it myself on the road, by just sheer hours of showing up to people, proposing to listen to them in an organic, authentic, curious, open-hearted way, they began to teach me how to do it. Not by saying, oh, you do it like this and you do it like this, but just their willingness to be listened to and be seen was their way of sort of teaching me how to do it. And slowly and surely, my chops grew, like I started to get some chops in it. And the work continues. I'm still learning about it. Yeah.
Of course. So how did they teach you to listen?
They taught me to listen. Anyone who, oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna keep it to the walk, the people on the walk, because I
You
can
don't
hear
have to.
myself.
You don't have to.
All right, I'll just roll with it then.
Just roll with it. Just go with where you're feeling.
Anyone and everyone is constantly teaching me how to listen.
Love it.
When I say I want to listen to you, I'm not saying I demand that you tear open your heart and give me your most intimate, vulnerable story. That's not what I'm saying. When I say I want to listen to you, what I'm saying is I want to get in tune with you, and I want to respect you, and I want to be an open door for you to come in as far as you want to come in, and if you want to share a story like that, teach me. I'll be the grateful recipient of that gift. But really, what I'm most concerned with is understanding who you are, and that might mean being willing to be with you when you just walk away from me. and that's how I'll listen to you. You know what I mean? And so each and every person, just by being themselves, is a master teacher in relationship. And each unique person is teaching me something new about love and about responsibility and responding, and how to move, and how to respect.
Yeah. Yeah. I love something that you said, and I think I read it in your bio, where you said that you were really looking for how to answer some of the things that separate people and keep people apart.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you had this moment of realization where you realized the listening was the answer. That all you really needed to do was listen to what people were saying without judgment, without, direction, without trying to say they should be saying something else, but just in listening.
Yeah.
And tell me the experience you felt people experienced when they finally realized that someone was sitting across from them and actually hearing them.
Yeah. The way I conceptualize it is there are certain parts of each one of us that can only come out and emerge and be seen in the presence of a trustworthy listener, a trustworthy witness. So if some part of me senses or intuits even the slightest suspicion that there might be the violence of judgment suffered, it's not going to come out.
Totally.
If I think, if I sense that, like, okay, I'm going to risk, there are just some stories and some experiences that there ain't no way I'm going to tell you if I think you're going to judge me for it, is basically what I'm saying. And so when someone would feel that they were in the presence of someone who really wasn't there to judge them, who really actually did, their primary agenda wasn't to sell them something or convince them of something or convert them, but was really to just find out who they actually really are right here and now and what made them that way. What happened was I got to see the truth, or just more of the truth of who they are. And the reason why I think this is so important, this is a long conversation, but the reason why this is so important is because it's almost like we need to find out who it is we're in conflict with before we try to solve the conflict. And in that process of finding out who it is we're in conflict with, the solution may slowly and surely reveal itself, because the more you understand somebody, the less you fear them. I just read this Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. quote this morning. It was like, what was it? It was like, people fear other people because they don't understand them.
Yeah, we fear what we don't understand.
People don't understand one another because they haven't communicated. And the thing that I would add to that is people don't communicate with each other because most of us haven't been taught to listen.
Totally.
Listening is an essential aspect of it.
So one of the things that I found, and this is like, I'm not saying it so that you believe it or you trust it. I want your opinion on it. And if you don't agree with it, please share that. Okay. One of the things that I found in writing my book, The Mosaic, was there was a character in there called the gardener. And to make the story very short, because that could be very long, is that Mo, the main character, comes upon this garden and sees this exquisite garden. He's seen thousands of gardens, but there's something about this garden that is just intoxicating. Everything about it. And it so overwhelms his senses that he has to close his eyes because it's too much for him to experience. And he feels a presence right in front of him. And he opens his eyes and the gardener's standing 3 inches away from him. And he looks at him and he says, "Who are you?" And he says, "I know who I am. You're in my garden. I'm the gardener. Who are you?" And Mo says, "I am just intoxicated by this place that you've created. How have you made this so beautiful?" And the gardener, after a lot of conversation, said, Mo, have you ever had a garden? Have you ever weeded a garden?
Mm.
And he said, yes, I have. And he said, so what do you do when you get to that clump of weeds that when you pull it out, it doesn't come out, it just breaks in your hand? And Mo said, well, I have a lot of other things to do in my life, so I just sort of level it off and make it look nice, but I don't have the time to dig it out. And the gardener said, maybe that's why this garden looks so beautiful to you, because I'm just a gardener. I have nothing to do but dig the weed out and get it at its roots. And he went on to say that as long as you have weeds in your garden, your own garden, every garden you look at will have weeds in it, and you'll see those as well.
Mm-hmm.
When you were talking about who we're in conflict with, do you get the sense that we're in conflict most of all with ourselves?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the journey that you took of listening to everybody's story, how much of it became a visualization of your own story? How much did you see yourself in the people that you were talking to?
I could, I think this is true. I think part of the reason why people shared with me in the way that they did was because I could feel some part of me in some part of them every time.
Absolutely.
I was open in that way, open to really feeling what it was they were sharing with me. And so I think in some ways with everybody, I see some part of myself. But you point to, I think, probably the most important piece here, which is every day of my year walking across America, I spent most of every day alone walking.
Yeah.
And getting to encounter myself in ways that I don't think I could have, were I sort of hustling and bustling from here to there and having conversations with people and doing this and doing that. It was some of the sort of, those things were stripped away, and it was just me. And what that meant is I began emotions and thoughts and thought patterns and experiences that had largely gone unseen in me were able to reveal themselves to me because they had the time and the space to do so. And so that meant I spent God only knows how many hours on the road just weeping.
Wow.
And what were those tears about?
Yeah.
Everything. They were about my parents' divorce. They were about my confusion and my questions. They were about the story that I had just heard that woman tell me, about her dead husband. They were about everything.
Yeah.
And finally, I was getting in touch with my heart's capacity to care, which is what inspires weeping. That's love right there. So I was feeling fear and doubt and all of these things. And it's hard work, but I don't know. It's also beautiful work.
It is
It's
beautiful.
yourself. It's falling in love with
Yeah.
your life.
Yeah.
It's getting to become your own best friend. And so, as you say, it's like I think the conflicts we experience with other people or other nations, but we'll just say other people, are just reflections of parts of ourselves that we haven't yet understood, touched, or been willing to hold.
Yeah. Well, what you say is so beautiful in that the practice of being alone gave you the time to learn how to feel and care about others, care about yourself and other people.
Yeah. And it wasn't so much something I was doing so much as it was something that was happening to me.
Understood. I love that.
I wasn't like, I'm going to learn this now. It was just like, shit, I'm alone. and like stuff's coming up. Stuff's coming up, baby.
And
Let it flow, you know?
And so where did you get the courage to just continue? Because I bet some of those demons that you heard inside yourself took you in a hero's journey sort of journey.
Yeah.
To the point of despair, to the point of, oh boy, I can't do this. I can't face this anymore. This is too hard.
Yeah.
I just want to get relief. I want to go home. I want to be taken care of. But how did you get through those moments? Because even though our listeners are not walking 4,000 miles across America, they're walking 10 inches from their head to their heart every day.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And those same challenges are what's there. So
same.
How did you get through it?
The first thing that comes to mind is we can't do this alone, and we really do need each other. We really need each other. So how did I do it? You know, I would be suffering through something. Maybe it's doubt, loneliness, fear, whatever. And I would experience the miracle of encountering another human being. We forget that it's a miracle to actually see somebody and meet someone, you know? So I was alone on the road, and which helped me remember what a special and precious thing it is to actually find yourself sharing a moment with another human being. So that would happen. I would, and I would then do what I could to entrust them with the truth of my experience. So if I was experiencing doubt, I would share that with them and then ask them about their own experiences of doubt. We can't do this alone, and we don't have to. And like opening up about the truth of whatever it is I was going through at that moment was massively. It was like magic, in that it would basically instantly alchemize the experience of doubt from being this isolating, shameful thing to actually something that's bringing me into a deeper connection with someone else. Because who hasn't experienced doubt? When I have the courage to share about it and ask for help with it and ask about it, the other person feels maybe a little more emboldened to do so too. And now we're relating to one another on a much deeper level, and that's nourishment. And that fed me in a way that helped me keep going.
So I love the conversation because it's real. And I'm sure this is a conversation you've had over and over and over with many people, because you're real and you've gone to that place where you've gotten that reality. So what I want to know is, in some ways it's easier, even though I know how painstakingly hard it was to go by yourself for 4,000 miles across the country, to experience loneliness and fear and really like bewilderment sometimes, right? But in some ways, that's your job there. You're out on the road. That's what you're doing. That's how you're living your life. Right. How is it now for you coming back? You're not walking 4,000 miles across. How do you still experience the miracle of meeting somebody? Do you not in the job of sitting down and listening to them, but in the person in front of the grocery line that's taking a little too long, and the person who cuts you off in the lane as you're driving, right? You know,
God damn you, you miracle!
Right.
You beautiful miracle! Yeah.
Can you be a miracle for someone else today, right? I just so how has your journey of 4,000 miles come into today's moment?
Yeah. Well, I guess one of the gifts of it was an extended period of time. It was like a concentrated dose of practice and work and experience. And I think strong enough a dose to kind of permanently alter my perspective, which is not to say I don't forget every day. You know what I mean?
Totally.
But I think what changed is just realizing, like, oh, right, this is a walk. There is no end, really, and it's just about this moment, and forgetting is going to be involved in that. And what's coming up right now is I think it gentled me.
Mm-hmm.
I think the experience gentled me.
I love
And
that.
yeah, and because you have to be gentle, gotta be gentle. If you're trying to walk all that way, if you're being harsh on yourself and hard on yourself and beating yourself up, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
You need to be healthy for this thing.
Yeah.
And it's the same for each and every one of us. It's the same for me right now. And so
I want to share
it's
with you.
it's work.
I
Yeah,
want to
it's
share
work.
with you while you're thinking. Can you see this? What I made?
Be kind to you.
Be kind to
Is
you.
that what it says?
Yeah.
Be kind to you.
And
Yeah,
so this is
got to be.
21-day consecutive challenge that I made for people
Oh, wow.
to see if
Cool.
we could practice kindness to ourselves for 21 days.
Mm.
I'm on day 19 now, and I've been wearing it for about 7 months. But it took me
What?
oftentimes it took me I was switching, because what happens is when you find you're not being kind to yourself, you take it off of this wrist and put it on the other and start over again.
Nice.
And so
Nice.
and
What
so
what what have you done today to be kind to yourself?
I woke up a lot and sat and connected to my source. My biggest kindness is when I sit and meditate and I just connect to
Mm.
myself, my source. I realign with my purpose, and then I can connect with others. Those are the 4 connections to me that came through the mosaic.
Mm-hmm.
That we can't connect with others until we connect first to
Mm-hmm.
ourselves and allow the walls that are around us to come down, because we stop hitting ourselves. We practice kindness. And as soon as I stop hitting myself all the time and judging myself and putting myself down, you there?
Lost you there for a second. I'm back.
Okay. All right. So until we stop hitting ourselves, when I hit
Yeah.
myself, I need a wall around myself. And look how close my wall is. It's right. When I make a commitment to be kind to myself, I don't need the wall anymore. So I can come face to face with you. Now we might put up a wall around us because we're scared of each other, but that's okay. Well, I know now kindness can take that down. So if I say to you, Andrew, I promise never to hurt you. I promise never to do anything. I just want to hold this space for you to be true to yourself. And I give you the commitment that I'll never hurt you. Can we, one brick at a time, take down the wall that's between us? You can keep the other 3 walls around you. It's okay. And when we're kind to each other, then we can become vulnerable. Then you see, that's the second practice, to be vulnerable. Then we allow ourselves to be seen and to see. And in our vulnerability, we become relatable, and we become real, and we become honest, and we become open. And it's sometimes scary, but when we're connected to ourselves, it stops mattering what you think of me, and becomes more important, what do I believe about myself? And my weed is out of my garden. You can say anything. You can say you're the biggest, fattest black man that ever existed, but some of that is true. I'm big, I'm fat, I'm not black. So I can say, okay, some of that's not right. Right. And then when we get to that place, then once we know what we're here to do, then we have kind people, vulnerable, purposeful, then we connect to each other and create something and build a mosaic. So if you were saying right now, this interests me, and it interests me from a personal level. So if it's not okay, the question I'm asking, just tell me it's not okay, and we can talk offline about it, or not talk about it at all. Okay.
Great.
I believe our work is very similar. I talk to people about listening, and the fact that listening is the lost art in our world today. And yet what I find is I'm speaking a lot about a practice of listening.
Mhm.
And what I'm wondering is for you, as you go now in your journey and you talk about what you've learned and you talk about listening, what has that done to your practice of listening? And is there a way that you can do your practice of being in front of people from a place of listening, also not just a place of speaking?
Mhm.
Do you understand my question?
Yes, I think so. Hello, mailman. How's it going? Good to have you. Mail woman. Excuse me. Um, yeah, I guess as my understanding of listening um, continues to grow, what I'm beginning to see is that it doesn't necessarily mean um, not speaking and absorbing someone else's sound waves into my ear holes. Um, it's more for me. It's growing into more of a, a posture of relating, and for me, it means when I say I want to listen, what I'm really saying is I want to be in relationship with you. I want to be in relationship with you. And so then it becomes a question of, well, what does that mean? What does that mean right here and right now with you, unique you? And so whether I'm, listening with my ears to something you're saying, or speaking to you, or reaching out to touch you on the shoulder, or not reaching out and not touching your body, like all of that is listening to me. Um, all of it is my own living of the question, um, what does it mean to be in relationship with you? What does it mean to be with? I'm here to be with. That's what I mean by listening.
Hmm.
Um, um, and how is respect a part of that? Um, what does it mean to make a beautiful song with you? It's nice to think of it as in the metaphor of like a jam session.
Yeah.
Like you've got a guitar, I've got a mandolin, or I've got my own guitar.
Yeah.
And what does it mean to make a beautiful song that is at once bringing out the fullness of my own talent and skill, and at the same time doing so in service to your talent and skill, and we support each other in our own magnificence and beauty and bigness, um, in supporting each other ultimately in service to the song that we can create with one another. And this is what we get to do in conversation. This is what we have the opportunity to do um, in our relationships. So when I'm
So,
speaking about listening in front of people, I'm acutely aware that there's a sort of an irony there, because we tend
yeah.
to understand listening to be a sort of I'm my ears are taking in what someone else is saying. And so what I try to do and what I want to do is uh, embody in that moment, um, what does it look like, and what is it to listen and express, to express in service to listening, to express in service to relationship, and being with.
So I would love to throw something out to you, not with the thought of teaching you or share, but just with the thought of getting your feedback on it, because this is the place that I've come to with it, because I'm on a lot of podcasts and I'm talking about this important need to listen. And I say, look at me, I've spoken for most of this time, right? So, and you've asked me questions and I'm answering them. Here's the place that I've gotten to over the course of time. Words are only one way that we listen. That if we really are attuned to who a person is, and we can tune into the soul of what a soul is saying, we can hear their soul and respond to it without them having to speak anything. But we have to remember that we're to connect soul to soul. We have to listen to what their body language is saying, what their soul is saying, what their eyes are saying, what their heart is saying. And so the process of listening, it isn't an ear process. It's a soul to soul process. And we can walk into a room and hear everything without anybody having to say anything. And of course, saying something is nice too. We listen to them when they speak, right? But they're speaking to us much, much more through a communication of soul. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. And there's never a moment where we are not transmitting or communicating something.
Yeah.
I'm always sending something out, and so for me, it's also about paying attention to what, just noticing what is it that I'm transmitting now, you know.
Yeah.
And if it's fear, it can't help but fear. Like I'm not in control of when fear arises, you know. Sometimes it just comes out of nowhere and hits me up, you know. If that happens, the lawnmower man wants to join our conversation now.
That's all right. That's all right. I can't hear him.
Nice.
So if fear happens,
for me, I think that then becomes an opportunity to go inward and look at how I relate to myself in that. And can I use that as an opportunity to gentle even more, you know?
Yeah.
Be forgiving and merciful, and which might incline me toward being able to transmit something else to someone else, you know.
So as we're winding down, because I want to be sensitive to your time, we have about 10 minutes left to talk with each other. What is one thing you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt before you went on your journey that you no longer believe is true after you took your journey?
Wow.
I just want to fill people in who are listening. This is dead space, but it's not dead space. Andrew is he's sitting and contemplating it. So stay with us. Okay. We didn't go off the air. We're here.
I love it. The thing that's coming to mind right now is the thing that I knew before the walk that I now no longer believe is that there is an answer. That there is a finish line. That whatever it is I'm looking for is somewhere else and something else. And I now, in my better moments, I mean, there are definitely moments where I find myself believing that where I'm supposed to be is actually somewhere else, and who I'm supposed to be is actually someone else. Like that's still there for me.
Yeah.
But I'm a little clearer on what I think is the truth, that this moment that I have been gifted with and entrusted with is it is the garden. Exactly what you're talking about is the beautiful garden, and all of the weeds are only weeds if I see them that way. You know, they're here and they belong. And so, and yeah, there's no need to walk 4,000 miles, you know, to learn something or to love someone or to transcend, and there's nothing to, I don't need to transcend. Can I just forget about transcendence or any sort of esoteric fancy enlightenment idea? Can I just have the courage to be here? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
I mean, can I just be here and learn how to love this, you know? So
Let me ask you sort of a fun question.
yeah.
Did you ever fall in love when you were walking?
Every day, baby. No, do you mean like romantic love?
Yeah. Did you ever see somebody and you go, "Oh my God, instantaneous. I just feel you. I fall in love with you. I want to be with you. I want to stay." And did that
Yeah,
ever happen to you?
it did. Yeah, it did.
And how did you leave that, or did you leave that?
You would like to know, wouldn't you, Daniel? It was no, I love it. I love the question. It was she was going her own way and I was going mine, you know, and it was hard. And I cried a whole hell of a lot, and getting back out on the road that day was so hard. But there's a Rainier Maria Rilke. He's I think a Austrian poet. He has this beautiful line where he says something like do what you can to embrace your solitude and sing out with the pain it causes you. Sing out, like, feel that, embrace that. And yeah, it's gonna hurt sometimes, and sing out, cry out, make a grief song out of that, make a poem out of that. Just weep with that, express yourself. You're alive, baby. You're alive, you know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason why I asked the question is it seemed like the trip taught you to go from your head to your heart, and it allowed you to feel. And so when you start to feel, how can you not fall in love? And in my book, The Mosaic, which I want to send you a copy of, just so you can, I think
thank you.
I think it'll be remarkable for you. It's a fable, but he meets the flower girl and he falls in love with the flower girl.
Beautiful.
And the flower girl and he have to part ways, and he just doesn't understand why that happens. I won't tell you how it ends because it's not important. We're at the place where the only question that's constant in the podcast is this question. With all that you've seen, the good and the bad, the beautiful and the not so beautiful, is this the world in the state of conflict that it's in the state of being that it's in? Is this the world that you always dreamed that you would hand over to your children and to your children's children?
It's getting there.
It's getting there.
It's getting there. We're getting there.
What's bringing that to you? What's bringing that there? Because 98% of the people that I talk to answers very quickly no. They say there are parts of it that are beautiful, but this world that we're living in with the hatred and the bigotry and all that stuff. But I sense in you that you've seen some of the other side of that. Yeah. You've walked into that bigotry and shown love and understanding. And so I want to know what you, if there was one thing from everything that you've seen that you really want to share with people, what would that one thing be?
I'm gonna quote Brian Stevenson here, author and activist lawyer who I got on a walk actually, and just a fantastic being. Each one of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done.
Love that.
And as a man who has gotten to know and defended human beings on death row, you know. So this is not a naive man, and here he is saying each one of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. And we've done some hard things. We've caused harm. And that's not mutually exclusive with the love that is each of us too,
Yeah.
and the humanity. And remembering that, I think, helps me live into the world that I want to hand over to my babies, my grandbabies.
Love it. Love it. If people want to find more about you, what you're doing, your workshops, your talks, the individual work you do with people, if they want to buy your book, where do they go, Andrew?
Studio is living2listen.com, and you can find my offerings there.
We have sometimes a bad connection where it goes off and on, so I want to make sure you say that one more time.
Thanks. It's living2listen.com, and you can find me there. I look forward to seeing you there.
So if you can't hear him, because it blurs in my hearing, sometimes it's living2listen.com, and you can find everything about him. He's also people have also taken his story, and he's in the beginning of a run of a theatrical performance where they're telling his story and the story of the people that he met. I listened to some of the songs online. It's gorgeous. And so, Andrew, you saw it a couple days ago, and tell us what you felt about that.
It was beautiful, surreal, and it's carrying the essence of what I was walking with and walking for. I encourage you to go to Chester, Connecticut at the Norma Terrace Theater and see Pass Through, is what it's called.
Passing through. All right. So for those of you who want more of him, living2listen.com. For me, who can't get enough of you, I hope this is the beginning of our conversation, not the end.
Likewise, Daniel.
I loved having you on. And for everyone, please, if you like the podcast, say you liked it, give a review of it, and don't be a stranger. Come back next week when we talk to another beautiful person. But for this time, show Andrew some love. Go to his website, buy his book. Go see where you can go to hear him speak, listen, and make what he's doing a part of your life, because what he's doing will change the world in a way that is beautiful. When we listen to each other, we actually get a chance to experience each other. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being my guest and for coming on, and I look forward to more.